So these 2 days we're going to talk about heat, and it's something. This is actually the first time I give this lecture, so I'm not sure exactly how long it takes. And I've been wanting to write something about heat for a long, long time, because when I read books, whether they are Chinese books in Chinese or Western books, I find there's a lot of confusion in the terminology. They talk about empty heat or empty fire. Chinese books often talk about empty fire. And so I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. And why does it take 2 days to talk about heat? It wouldn't take 2 days, interestingly. It would not take 2 days to talk about cold. Would it? It was very simple. It might take 2 hours at the most. Sorry?
Unless you're studying the Shanganlun, then.
Unless you study the Shanganlun, yes. But that's one point I wanted to make today. In the Shanganlun, you have the 6 stages. After the Taiyang stage, what have you got? Heat. Yaming. So that's because, by the way, why is heat so common? Because pathogenic factors inside the body turn into heat. You never read a pathogenic factor, heat, entering the body, turning into cold. Never. So there is a tendency for pathogenic factors to turn into heat. And I have a statistic here on tongue diagnosis from my practice in England, which I wanted to show you. And the focus of this is not too good, is it? I'll better not touch it, that's not the focus. If you look at this, 32% of tongues were pale, as opposed to 46 red points. And that's in a cold country. So imagine in a hot, damp country. Okay, so we see many more people with red tongues and heat than with cold. And my experience, my limited experience here would be that I haven't made statistics here, but my hunch would be that here there is even more heat in the United States compared to what I saw in England. Okay, so that's one important reason why it's so important to understand the treatment of heat. I'll leave this tongue diagnosis presentation open because you might need it. Okay, so that's the Chinese word for heat is re, this one here. That's the old form, that's the new form. These 4 things at the bottom indicates something boiling, something hot. And the word re, which means heat, in Chinese medicine is used in 2 ways. In a general sense, it includes everything to do with heat. Re-ping in the Neijing is any disease characterized by heat, which can be external, internal. It may include fire, empty heat, anything to do with heat. In a more specific sense, so in a general sense, it's a collective term. In a more specific sense, as we will see a bit later, Re is opposed to Huo. Huo is fire. And there are 2 different things, as we will see. And that's actually one of the most important parts of this lecture in the treatment, the distinction between Re, heat, and Huo, fire. Okay? So it's used in 2 ways. let's talk about the etiology of heat. Why is it so common? In my experience, in my opinion, the most important reason by far is emotional stress. Interestingly, emotional stress doesn't lead to cold, ever, does it? It leads to heat. Why does it lead to heat? Because it leads to chi stagnation. Every emotion leads to some chi stagnation. Some lead to chi stagnation directly, like anger or worry, very much, or pensiveness. Some lead to chi deficiency, like grief and sadness. But even those that lead to chi deficiency also lead to some chi stagnation. So either you have chi stagnation, or you have chi stagnation combined with chi deficiency. And chi stagnation with time. When I say with time, it's not that long, weeks or months. Chi stagnation leads to heat. That's why the tip of the tongue becomes red. And as I said yesterday, the tip of the tongue reflects every emotion, not just the heart. Because every emotion affects the heart. Because the heart is the only one that has the shape. Remember we said that? Not yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. In the morning. When you say I am angry, I, who is that I? The Shen of the heart. Anger affects the liver, but the liver doesn't have the Shen. In fact, there is a Chinese book that says exactly that, an old book. Anger affects the liver, but the liver doesn't know it. That's what it says. The heart knows it. And it says that for every emotion. Worry affects the lungs, but the lungs don't know it. The heart knows it, etc., etc. So that a red tip of the tongue does not usually indicate excess joy. But it can be anger, worry, pensiveness, fear, shame, guilt, anything. And in my opinion, this is probably the main cause of heat in our patients. And I'm talking now about full heat, as you can see in this slide here. We're going to talk about empty heat separately. Okay? By the way, emotions would cause initially full heat only. There isn't an emotion that would cause empty heat, because empty heat derives from yin deficiency. Okay? So by definition, what I'm saying here, the etiology of heat applies to full heat, not empty heat. Okay?
Even if you're yin shu constitution and you're emotional and then you...
We're going to discuss the etiology of empty heat separately.
Okay.
It's completely different because it derives from yin deficiency. And yin deficiency arises very slowly.
But then at the emotion peak.
Yes, emotions can contribute to that, yes, very much so. But initially, with emotional stress, it's full heat. You can't say fear causes empty heat. You can't. Because in order to have empty heat, you must have yin shu. So there are two things in empty heat. Something that causes yin shu, and something that causes the empty heat. You know what I mean? We're going to talk about empty heat very soon. So by definition, when I talk about emotional stress, chi stagnation leading to heat, we are talking about full heat. Okay? Is that clear or no?
Even in the case of chi deficiency, it is full heat?
Yes.
Full heat, okay.
Yes. Example, sadness and grief deplete chi of the lungs and heart. But they also cause some chi stagnation. And the chi stagnation can lead to heat. And you have some heat and chi deficiency. Yes. So, as you can see in this slide here, we're not talking about empty heat because that becomes an issue. There are other causes of heat, of course. Diet is an important one, and an external pathogenic factor. And these basically are the only three: emotional stress, diet, and external pathogenic factors turning into heat, which is actually very common.
And when you say diet, you'll probably cover this, but you're talking about like a Western diet.
But I'm going to mention in a moment what I mean by diet. By diet, by the way, a very important cause of heat includes what you drink and alcohol. And that's a major cause of heat. For example, in England, the patients I saw with heat, alcohol would have been a major cause of heat. Not so much the diet, because in England no one eats hot food. Like in California, people like a lot of Mexican food, very hot food. Many of my friends like very hot Mexican food. English people don't eat that. So in England, a major cause of heat in the diet would be the alcohol. And here too, I suppose. But okay, so this slide here says what we already just said about emotions leading to heat, and that's a great picture of a red tip, by the way. A red tip on the tongue. However, it's not a great picture showing full heat. Why not? Because?
It's pointed, it's not, the tongue itself isn't whole, and
Yeah, that's one.
the whole thing should be red and full.
Well, the whole tongue is red.
Let's see what.
The tip is redder.
Yes.
But this tongue, you see here, lacks a coating.
Um,
So this woman has yin shu. So that's empty heat, in fact.
um,
But I have it here because it's a great example of red tip. But in fact, this is empty heat. Yeah, because it lacks a coating. Yeah, here, all that here. There is some yellow coating there, but all that is without coating. Actually, it's not a woman, it's a man. But it's a great example of red tip because the tip, see the color of the tip is different than the rest of the tongue. It's really bright red. And the tip is also a little bit swollen, which makes it worse. And that's the point I was making earlier, that all emotions affect the heart, as well as affecting individual organs. And by the way, the red tip of the tongue is very reliable. I've never seen that to be wrong. If someone has a tongue like that, I mean, you can be certain that they are and have been under strong, severe emotional stress. The redder, the more the stress, or the longer lasting. And if it's swollen, it's even worse. And if it has red points, it's even worse.
You're speaking more of the tip than the body.
The tip, yeah, I'm speaking about the tip. The diet, what causes heat in the diet? Meat, of course, especially red meat, hot foods, and alcohol. And of the meats, wild meats are even hotter, but that's not something that people eat a lot of. Thank you. I have some friends who live in Yukon, in White Horse, Yukon, and he goes hunting, and he hunts moose. And they put it in the freezer for the whole year. That's a hot meat, but living in Yukon, you need it. But I would say a major cause of heat in the diet would be alcohol. And of the alcohol, whiskey and spirits like that are hotter than wine, and wine is hotter than beer. Yes?
Often have a lot of patients say, okay, I'm going to try not to drink as much, but is there one you can recommend over the other? So.
Well, spirits are hotter than wine, and wine is hotter than beer.
Okay, so beer.
Beer would be the
Beer's good.
the least hot of the three. The least hot.
Is there a difference between red and white?
Wine? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Can you comment on how hot antibiotic and hormone use in red meat is compared to the wild meat?
Yeah, antibiotics and hormones. Yeah, the use of hormones would make it hotter. Yes. Yeah. Antibiotics, I'm not so sure. I don't subscribe to the theory that you can assign Chinese actions to Western drugs. I know that I'm probably the only one who says so, that antibiotics are cold. I have my doubts that you can assign Chinese actions to drugs. You know what I mean? Drugs are in single molecules. And the Chinese action apply to some natural herbs that have a taste, sweet, sour, pungent, hot or cold. Can you do that for single molecules? You know, Tylenol. You know, if you look at the side effects of drugs, there are hundreds. And you could identify any pattern from those side effects. You know what I mean? But I know I'm probably the only one who says this. Also, let's say you've got underactive thyroid, and you have certain symptoms of underactive thyroid. You feel cold, growth of hair, amenorrhea, tired, etc., right? Constipation, and you take thyroxine, and all those symptoms improve. And in your case, and in many cases, your underactive thyroid is due to spleen and kidney yang deficiency, right? You take thyroxine and everything gets better. Can you say that thyroxine is a spleen and kidney yang tonic? I don't think so. You know what I mean? I don't think so. It makes those symptoms disappear, but it doesn't tonify the spleen and kidneys, does it? And I know that for a fact, because I treat women with underactive thyroid who are taking thyroxine. And you tonify spleen and kidneys, and they have certain results, and they feel bad. It's not, you know what I mean? Anyway. Okay, and the other source of heat is an external pathogenic factor, which happens a lot in the patients we see. And what we see very much is residual pathogenic factor, which is very common. A residual pathogenic factor means what? That you have an invasion of wind, you have a flu, and the flu maybe goes to the chest, you get bronchitis and a cough, and maybe you take antibiotics or you don't, you appear to recover, but you have leftover phlegm in the lungs. And that's what I call residual pathogenic factor, and also called lingering pathogenic factor. It's the same thing. Some people call it lingering pathogenic factor or residual pathogenic factor. Extremely common, especially in the lungs, but it could also happen in the stomach and intestines. And the residual pathogenic factor can be heat, straight heat, or phlegm heat or damp heat. Very, very common in children. I would say that in small children of 4 or 5 or 6, half of their problems or more are residual pathogenic factors. Because they get so many colds, ear infections, throat, flus, they get antibiotics. They recover, or they appear to recover, then they get another one, etc., etc. At the acute level, we also have lung heat, but that's only acute heat. You have a flu, it goes to the lungs, you get lung heat or lung phlegm heat. It can be cured, it's expelled, and it's only short-term heat. It only becomes long-term when you have residual pathogenic factor, or you can also call it residual heat. And those tongues are a very good example of it. And very often you see people with lung heat without symptoms, but are always treated. If I see that, you see those red points? Don't be surprised if a person has a tongue like that and has no symptoms. And this one also, this one is worse than that. Why is this worse? Because it's redder than that, and it lacks a coating. So it's yin shu, empty heat. And empty heat, by the way, is worse than full heat, by the way. Because you have yin shu as well. And yin shu is not a good thing to have. Yin is the substance. Okay?